We almost ended up in the bad timeline.
But there's one problem in particular I've been hating for decades, and it's getting worse and worse. And that is destroying video games so that no one can ever play them again.
Eat my kindness. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours.
I know people don't like drama, but this isn't really drama. This is about something that matters, at least if you are a regular viewer of mine. The core of it all is based in logical and ethical argumentation about your rights and asking for one thing: stop killing games. And yet, we nearly lost our chance just to try to make things a little better because of one man's ego. This is a cautionary tale about why you shouldn't trust people online just because they have deep voices and speak with authority. So I hope you will join me today as we do a post-mortem on the Pirate Software incident. I explicitly do not condone any viewer behavior against Jason. Pirate Software has had no shortage of videos made on him in 2025. I left to go on a charity bike ride for a few weeks thinking that since the petition had just hit 1 million signatures, the story would dry up and people would inevitably move on. A month later, and there was an ever-increasing number of videos on this topic. Content creators really do not get to dictate what people are interested in watching. These videos didn't spawn out of the ether and people were forced to consume them. They were created because people were so invested in this topic. Now, people hate Pirate Software now, and that couldn't have been further from the truth 12 months ago. I had the perfect opportunity to cash in on this subject. I had disliked Pirate Software for almost a year and was in a prime position to cover the drama. No, I wanted to do a genuine retrospective on the entire saga out of good faith, which is why this video has no sponsor. I'm not here to grift, so I waited for the drama to die down before making this video. The Pirate Software story has bits for everyone. People who generally don't like drama content tend to override those feelings whenever certain triggers come up. For an unrelated example, if someone does a crypto rug pull, someone who usually hates drama might take interest in that story. Again, no relation to today's topic. We can divide these subjects up into 3 types of argument: logos, or logical, ethos, or ethical, and pathos, or emotional. Arguments of the brain, heart, and dick. In no particular order, we have the following: anti-consumer, pro-corporation stances, being a bully, not being able to handle criticism, deleting VODs, over-reliance on credentialism, being a nepo baby, having a corporate conflict of interest, using word filters, having an unfinished Kickstarter indie game, lying about being unable to make progress due to COVID when in reality he just wanted to be a full-time streamer, cheating in puzzle games to look more intelligent, abusing DMCA and engaging in lawfare, a fake personality, smug arrogance in every clip of him online, being a former federal agent, playing World of Warcraft, being bad at World of Warcraft, scamming his audience into fear of missing out for donations, refusing to take accountability, narcissism, gay furry ERP with multiple partners while still being married to a woman, and even more.
Revenge. Tie the leader.
I thought that was going to go on forever. Surely 1 or 2 elements of what I just listed caught your ear. Yes, Pirate Software has a little bit of everything to catch the attention of everyone. But an even bigger problem for him is the fact that he's so outrageously arrogant that he managed to keep everyone pissed off at him simply because he refused to just apologize. As a quick context wagon, there is an ongoing movement to try to stop the planned obsolescence of video games called StopKillingGames. Pirate was asked about it, and it's clear he hated the idea. He was extremely abrasive about this and largely ignored criticism of his response until it caught up to him 11 months later and pissed off a bunch of people online. He then made a post doubling down, leading to large numbers of people exposing various facets of his character for a variety of reasons.
I've been called a pedophile, zoophile, rapist, corporate plant, degenerate, narcissist, nepo baby, and many other names.
Now, you might be logically inclined and trying to keep your attacks above the belt, but after days of learning about the controversy, you start wandering into the ethical arguments. And then it just keeps going for the next week. He doubles down or has some cope post from his server get leaked. So you start looking into the emotional arguments too. And then you end up reading Gay Furry ERP. Pirate Software could have stopped the dogpile at any... Pirate Software could have stopped the platonic dogpile at any time.
Yeah, simply bend the knee and lie about how you feel, and everyone will stop bullying you. That's a great idea, dude. Yeah, no, eat shit.
But that's not what people wanted. Some maybe, but many just wanted these core issues addressed. Acknowledge what StopKillingGames is actually about. Acknowledge what StopKillingGames wants. Show understanding of the legal processes being followed and what realistic enforcement would look like. And apologize to Ross Scott. None of this requires that he change his core beliefs or even personal behavior. All that was desired was for Pirate Software to acknowledge that he misunderstood the initiative, that he spread misinformation about it, and that he acted like a giant asshole for no reason. And all of that could have been resolved in one live-streamed conversation with Ross Scott, none of which requires he change his stance. In fact, multiple people have tried arguing against the movement and were not obliterated from orbit the same way Jason has been. It's not his stance that is angering people, it's his behavior. He has doubled down at every turn, and that kept people angry. So, you might be asking for more context. I'm going to establish a timeline of events for how all of this went down and went so poorly, and how StopKillingGames ended up winning in the end. Ross Scott is the man behind the YouTube channel Accursed Farms, known for his machinima work of Freeman's Mind, Civil Protection, and a game review show, Game Dungeon. In 2015, Ross reviewed the game Battleforge. It was a live service RTS published by Electronic Arts that was shut down. He highlighted how, despite the fact that he had paid for the game, and liked aspects of it, he had no power to stop the game from dying. It unnecessarily relied on a central server, and when EA pulled the plug, that was it. The business practice was very new, many gamers likely not anticipating the future issues it would cause consumers, and Ross had already picked up on the bad practice. Then, in early 2016, he reviewed another game, Darkspore. This time, he was going to take a stand. He wasn't just arguing in a video about how this was a bad practice, he wanted to do something to stop its death. So he organized a mail-in campaign to flood EA with letters asking them to not kill the game.
My plan is I want to bombard EA executives with message after message asking them to stop killing games. And I especially want this done with physical mailed letters.
This did nothing, as EA just ignored the letters. Well, almost nothing. It proved one thing, that asking the corporations nicely to stop killing games was not going to work. As the years went on, he kept reviewing various live service games, and even started a new channel, Dead Game News. His hope was that he could draw enough attention to the issue that someone would do something about it. No luck. He even made a big video titled Games as a Service is Fraud that racked up over 1 million views. And still, this did nothing. The tides would turn when one game Ross had reviewed was being shut down, Ubisoft's The Crew, an open-world racing game set in a digital recreation of the entire United States, with millions of customers. No longer was Ross having to argue about the merits of obscure live service games few people had ever played. Even better, Ross was taking the fight to Ubisoft's doorstep, France. American consumer protection laws are currently considered to be a lost cause, so the next best thing is to enforce consumer protection in Europe. Then companies have a simple choice. Either they stop killing their games, or stop doing business in the EU. An advocacy group formed, and an EU petition was created. It needed 1 million signatures to pass, and Ross had 1 year to get all of those signatures. Ross and the SKG group were very thorough in their attempts to follow procedure to make sure that the petition was both fair, but staunch in its protections of the rights we already have. It was a no-brainer, and many people were pushing viewers towards the petition, and it was racking up hundreds of thousands of signatures. And then our next party entered the story. Jason Thorhall runs a channel and company named Pirate Software that was primarily a streaming platform for independent game development, as well as branching into shorts content. He claimed to have decades of AAA game development experience with a mission statement
5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, announcer. He claimed to have decades of AAA game development experience with a mission statement of clearing up misinformation that gamers have about the process of game development. He was primarily known for his streams and shorts, where he would give aspirational statements encouraging indie game devs to keep trying to achieve their goals. He ended up earning the colloquial nickname of Mr. Rogers of the internet. Now, I won't lie, I do watch a lot of drama content. I could write a book on why Creator Clash 3 failed, so I knew there was somebody who had earned that nickname before. Boogie2988.
I'm going to be literal Mr. Rogers instead of people call me the Mr. Rogers of YouTube every once in a while.
I even knew a kid in high school who swore by Boogie's nice guy shtick, but it was exactly that, a shtick.
You got this.
Matt, shut the fuck up! Let me get through it, motherfucker!
Yeah, Boogie wasn't as nice as he pretended to be. In fact, he pretended to have cancer for a few years just to solicit donations. A lot of YouTubers who put on airs of being good guys tend to end up being monsters in reality. So, people suggested Ross reach out to Pirate Software. He was blowing up on YouTube at the time and was quite the successful streamer on Twitch, so his support would go a long way for the movement. Let's check in on what he had to say.
This shit sucks. I dropped the mask entirely. They can eat my entire ass. The whole thing. That sounds stupid as shit.
And that's just a small sampling because I don't want to raise anybody's blood pressure more than I have to by playing the minutes-long compilation of insults aimed just at Ross. You can go to this timestamp in his video on the subject linked below if you want to see the full thing. Pirate Software was not a fan of the initiative.
Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to.
In fact, he called Ross
It's used car salesman garbage.
Yeah, the guy we just established earlier that had been fighting back against this practice for almost a decade, longer than Pirate had even been on YouTube, and was not accepting donations to run this campaign. Yeah, he's a used car salesman. Avid supporters of Ross and StopKillingGames were naturally upset at this response, especially after Pirate Software made 2 videos on the subject with the highest effective view counts. Jason was dominating the search algorithm with misinformation about the campaign, ignoring all criticism and rebuttals on the subject, and because of his good reputation, many were quick to just believe him. That's part of why this blew up in his face so badly. He had poured so much into this good guy ruse that when it was revealed to be a hoax, some that had believed he was sincere were the most upset. However, Ross didn't fight back. He's old school internet, and older. He viewed the drama aspect as, well, unsavory. I got an interview with him at the time, and he seemed to view my angle as being interested in it for the drama, which, fair, I kind of was.
But even then, I don't think it's...
But this sounds like...
I don't see it very productive to focus on him. I mean, he's made it very clear what his stance is. I mean, I guess it helps your channel for the drama from it, but that's not where my mind is at all. Like, I released
he's the main
video
opposition,
fact,
and he's controlling the search algorithm in terms of if you look up Stop Killing Games, his video's on top.
Yeah, though I think our biggest enemy isn't like him being totally against it. I think it's just getting people aware of it in the first place. We're more of a spot where any news is good news.
You see, this is why he's running the show. If it was me, I would have thrown the gauntlet down and fought him then and there, and that would have absolutely been the wrong move. Pirate Software had the, quote, good guy mandate of heaven, unquote. At the time, whenever I'd complain on social media about him, I'd usually get 1 or 2 replies asking why I was hating on Jason. That is how ingrained in the cultural landscape support for him was. And this is almost where things ended. Stop Killing Games started to peter out in support, and in 11 months hadn't even broken 500,000 signatures. Pirate Software, by himself, had practically killed the movement.
Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to.
Unfortunately, this next part requires I talk about something people tend to glaze their eyes over for. A lot of people think the subject is silly. However, I assure you that it's actually a perfect representation of Pirate Software's pathology and how he handled the Stop Killing Games movement. It might seem absurd that an incident in a video game was what ultimately ruined him, but I disagree. See, the thing is, If someone can't handle the pressure of playing World of Warcraft, then how emotionally mature are they going to be in real life?
All of the accounts that are messaging me are getting reported. There's a funny fact about this. I worked at Blizzard for 7 years. There's a whole lot of other people there that still know me, and all of these reports are going directly to them. They're well aware of the situation, and everybody who's messaging me, they're going to get read. It's kind of a dumbass thing to do, and I can't wait for all of them to get banned.
Sure, his behavior towards Ross was logically more abhorrent, but many people simply didn't know about that, because Ross either didn't or was unable to turn it into a big drama. But this is succinct. What happened to Ross was spread out across hours of live streams and different videos, but this WoW clip was a mere 90 seconds. Ironic that Pirate Software ultimately got done in by a short. In this clip, Pirate Software is playing hardcore classic World of Warcraft. This is a mode where if you die, you lose your character. Well, you just can't play in the hardcore realm anymore. But Pirate is in a streamer guild, OnlyFangs, which is on the hardcore realm. So people want to see how far they can get without dying as a self-imposed challenge. This should be easy to understand as Minecraft has a hardcore mode as well. Hardcore is also played on what is considered to be the most challenging version of the game, or at least the one where it is the easiest to die while you're leveling, adding to the overall challenge. He is currently doing a dungeon with 4 other people. Each of these characters is level 60. For reference, a typical playthrough to get to 60 is generally going to be around 125 hours, closer to 175. Given this is hardcore, times may be even slower due to risk aversion. That's roughly the length of comprehensive run-throughs of Skyrim and Fallout 4 combined, and each of these characters represents that. And that's just the minimum, not accounting for any additional playtime after they hit 60. So, a lot of time is on the line. Additionally, Pirate is a streamer famous for having worked at Blizzard, so this is also a source of income and content for him, adding to the pressure. During this dungeon, a call is made to run. Now, how he behaves is somewhat understandable and what a lot of people are likely to do, but after he has plenty of time to consider the situation and options, panic stops being an excuse. FYI, his health isn't actually low, he has an add-on obfuscating that for content.
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Now, his skill level here is contingent on game knowledge, but is relatively easy to understand. He is playing a Frost Mage, which has multiple abilities centered around either freezing enemies in place or slowing them down. Both would keep the people being chased alive for longer. He expends a lot of his mana, or resources, however, on abilities that preserve him, such as giving him a shield effect instead of helping his party. Pirate also has 2 items which can give him more resources to utilize his abilities, and you can even see him almost mouse over to activate them before visibly hesitating.
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Just kill the Mastiffs. One shot. Okay, we
More
pulled
on
another
the way,
house
more on the
right
way.
now. The Mastiffs can be Ice Novas.
As soon as he is being socially confronted for not helping, he decides within 4 seconds to not use them at all. This is the mana gem that you will get banned from his chat for mentioning. 2 players die because of this, losing hundreds of hours of progress and the ability to continue participating in their hardcore guild. While it is a pretty poor performance, it's how he is behaving that really makes him look bad. He realizes this is a poor look on him, which is why he doesn't activate his mana items, as it would expose to his dead teammates that there was actually a lot more that he could have done. He's confrontational in chat and not apologetic. How he handled the aftermath was even worse, as he'd continually double down on his decision instead of just admitting that it was a bad play. But why? Why double down and not just apologize? Same reason he did it with Ross. It's because he thinks apologizing would make him look bad.
First stage engine burn nominal.
Pirate Software cares very much about being perceived as intelligent. He has, at least twice, been caught having looked up the solutions in puzzle games preemptively, in order to make it look like he was smart enough to figure it out first try, getting caught in animal well due to the fact that he hadn't even been given enough information yet to actually solve the puzzle. Pirate was known for berating other mages in his guild for being bad at the game, which... fair. Mages tend to be attractive to really bad players, but this was just an embarrassing performance in the eyes of the WoW community, and his response to it looked bad to the broader public. But okay, so he sucks at video games. Why did people care so much? People who were originally pissed off during the Stop Killing Games event developed a degree of animosity towards Pirate Software and started investigating him as a person. For my part, I looked into and exposed online some of his business practices, such as being tied to an indie publishing company that was actually publishing a live service game, presenting a conflict of interest. Many of the points on the list I mentioned near the start of the video were uncovered at this stage, months before the eventual blow-up. People were gradually building case files on this guy, so then, when the WoW thing happened, people started trying to spill the tea. For my part, I saw it as an opportunity to right the wrong of Stop Killing Games, but sadly that didn't work. But there were tons of new people who didn't like Jason, and his reputation was turning into a ticking time bomb. The longer he didn't address the issues, the more resentment he was building in people. Things, however, got really bad as Pirate started to issue DMCA notices, a game, an indie game. Mr. Rogers of the indie game influencer world is doing lawfare against indie game devs.
So I filed a DMCA claim, and he has now filed a counterclaim against me. We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission. So I'm going to send this over to Kronos now, because he is a lawyer in copyright law. That is his job.
Yeah, he thought this was an epic and badass moment of standing up for himself, and didn't realize it was a total failure. The game is a parody of popular streamers, and the clip he tried to DMCA wasn't actually in the game, but a marketing video the dev had posted to Reddit.
It's a really stupid thing to do. Incredibly so.
An evergreen quote for this entire video. A lawyer stepped in and offered pro bono assistance for the indie dev, so Pirate dropped it, as it turns out his Discord law enthusiast moderator had misled him on how he should go about this case. Almost like he doesn't understand legal issues. What he had intended to have look like a badass moment blew up spectacularly in his face. But slowly, interest died, and the internet moved on. In the 11th hour of the Stop Killing Games campaign, just 1 month away, and with 600,000 signatures to go, Ross Scott admitted defeat. He made a video explaining the situation and finally stepped into the drama ring. Kind of. Despite being so thoroughly and maliciously attacked,
Lost the lead.
Ross kept his arguments squarely above the belt. There was enough to criticize Pirate Software on that didn't require ad hominem attacks. And it worked. Stop Killing Games' most adherent followers brought their case files to the public, and people took serious interest in the story. This became a rapidly expanding runaway chain reaction. Pirate Software responds to the video on Twitter, clearly not having watched it. "Sup, Accursed Farms. Now your initiative has failed, and you're blaming me for 33 minutes of an hour-long video covering it. I'm fine with talking to people that are level-headed about this and can have a conversation, but to be real, dude, every time you've been involved, your orbiters turn shit toxic instantly, and it sets me off." What do the people that you're claiming are in Ross's community have to do with you talking with him personally? If the roles were reversed, would you be happy that we refused to talk to you about this issue? Because your fans are also rabid? It's the internet. People are rabid these days. Why do you think I haven't talked about this shit in 10 months? Why do you think we auto-mute anyone bringing it up in chat? Because you're dodging criticism and accountability and are aware that acknowledging it would make your stated goal of sandbagging the initiative less effective. People respond, including Josh Strife Hayes and Moist Critical. After 4 hours of arguing, which he then describes as a conversation, he issues an apology, and the matter dies out. Obviously not, as the apology was immediately followed by an essay, basically proving he wasn't sorry. Life pro tip, if you ever have to apologize, don't explain why you did the bad thing. You can at a later point if you feel you have to, but people in the moment just want to know that you feel remorse for doing something bad. If you write an essay about why you did the bad thing, it comes off like you aren't actually sorry, but being manipulative or argumentative.
How would you feel about just ending it after that first paragraph?
I hate that.
Okay.
I have like an immediate, emotionally angry response against that.
Very good.
Because it feels like idiocracy.
People started covering the situation. Some are attacking the logical arguments again, others the ethical arguments, and some still the emotional points. And then July 3rd happens. StopKillingGames had organized a big, concentrated push to try to get the movement trending, and as many content creators to cover it as possible. And people were eager to. And by eager to, I mean either do so to stand up to Pirate Software's manipulation, or just make content making fun of him. This was the main time in the entire timeline I have talked about Jason post-blowup. As people covered the situation, more eyes were drawn to how outrageous he was, and that only inspired more people to cover it, and more eyes to see it. And then Jason would cope post in his Discord, the posts would get shared online, no apologies, only doubling down. This guy was getting torn a new asshole from every direction. I rarely agree with using this term, but this truly was a dog pile. But Pirate Software deserved it. If there is one thing the internet cannot tolerate, it's a bully with a fragile ego. I also think people are tired of seeing influencers get called out online, only for them to try to ignore all of the criticism and then brute force their way through controversies. I'm not going to go in depth on his critique of StopKillingGames. This was done by Ross as well as a few others months prior to the blowup, and more recently by a few other people. Pirate Software acts like the matter was simply settled in his original videos and was being randomly dredged up for content again. But the reality is that he did the typical internet thing of just ignoring all criticism so that his fans would think that there was simply nothing more to the story. I've experienced this firsthand. Despite explicitly stating that he encouraged people to fact-check his video, Never Knows Best has never acknowledged the many people that have done so. And that's because it would undermine his malicious hit piece if he did. Pirate Software believes that if he gave an inch, he would lose. And remember what he said.
Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to.
Instead, I want to take you through the topic list. All of this was being exposed at roughly the same time. So let's start with the logical arguments and work our ways down. Credentialism is an internet concept that generally believes that in order to be qualified to speak on a subject at all, you need to have some kind of education, training, or experience in that field. While the merits of this make sense and have grounding in reality, some people use it as a tactic to overemphasize their own value or shout down people for simply having an opinion. I'm sure you've heard some adage about not needing to be a chef to judge food. Most people know credentialism is silly. One doesn't need to be an aerospace engineer to express a desire for airplanes in general, to stop falling out of the sky. Jason Hall places a lot of emphasis on the fact that he has...
For those of you who are new, I've been in the gaming industry for 20 years. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment, then I worked for Amazon Game Studio, then I worked for the United States Department of Energy. I'm a hacker, pen tester, and I have 3 black badges from DEF CON. I own my own game studio now, and we release indie games, and they've done really well. I hacked power plants for the federal government. That was my last job.
It's probably the most common meme about the guy. Hell, he's tried to downplay it.
I was watching a video that was critiquing you for mentioning you work at Blizzard so much. I literally never talk about it. When I worked at Blizzard, I did that for Blizzard. Blizzard, 7 years, yeah. Blizzard. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment.
This goes on for a while. Pirate Software emphasizes his decades of industry experience to give his arguments authority, and why shouldn't he? Plenty of industry veterans have recently taken to YouTube to share their experiences, give people more information about games they feel passionate about, and dispel misconceptions about development. Sadly, for every Tim Kaine, we tend to also get a David Jaffe. Jason speaks authoritatively on the subject of Stop Killing Games because he has, at least as far as his audience is aware, 2 decades worth of experience to do so. His opinion should be valuable. Given practically every point he's made about the initiative has been debunked, people started to question how someone with 20 years of industry experience could be this wrong on the subject. So, people started digging into his job history. Turns out he wasn't some legendary programmer at Blizzard. He worked in quality assurance and security. Now, I'm not an elitist who thinks these roles aren't real developers, and I think both of these positions can give him some valuable insight into how games are made. Some people have lost the plot and equate coding as the sole qualification for being a game developer. Nate Perkypile is a 21-year career developer known for being a world artist at Bethesda who retired to pursue indie game dev, just like Jason had, around the same time. The difference is that his game, The Axis Unseen, is actually good and finished. Despite not being a programmer, I doubt anyone would question Perkypile's credentials. Pirate's code is full of cringe, but independent game development is about needing to be good enough in a wide variety of fields, not just programming. That said, some of his decisions are likely to be impacting the pace he can implement content into his game. Accounting for lots of branching decisions can be a mess in terms of code if you aren't careful early into development, and this could explain why his game has made so little progress in the last few years. At the very least, one would expect Pirate's games to be extremely functional thanks to working in QA, and very secure thanks to working in security. He's a hacker, by the way. He mentions it a lot. In fact, he made an unpiratable game.
So you can't pirate it because you can never use the achievements. It made it unpiratable, which is deeply hilarious to me. So you can't pirate it because you can never use the achievements. It made it unpiratable.
Turns out either he didn't know or simply lied about the fact that his unpiratable game had been cracked within days of release. Several people demonstrated how easy it is to do so, and how Jason was not employing the most basic of security techniques to at least slow people down from reverse engineering his code. For the years of hacker experience he would claim to have, he actually seemed pretty bad at preventing it. And no, this was not some kind of ARG to encourage people to pick up piracy. Despite his name, he's actually quite against it. His points on why Stop Killing Games wouldn't work from a security perspective also held so little water. People questioned if he even understood what his role at Blizzard had been. Moreover, he was kind of stretching the truth on his development history. He may have worked in the industry for a long time, but he's equating eras when he worked on people's Second Life furry character models and his own indie games. That's a lot less impressive than how it sounds when you say you worked at Blizzard. And how did he get that job?
I actually am the first second-generation Blizzard employee.
Jason's father is Joey Hall, one of the founders at Blizzard. While this could have helped him get a job, the reality is that when Jason joined the company, Blizzard was hiring practically anybody with a pulse to work in their QA department due to the release of a little game called World of Warcraft. Jason would have gotten the job even if his dad didn't work for the company. I think being a Nepo baby is kind of a non-point, honestly, but some people really care because it undermines the idea that Pirate was this amazing developer.
I've been called a Nepo baby and many other names.
And I mean, it's humorous that the source of him benefiting from nepotism was himself.
Yeah, so my first job was actually nepotism.
Not anybody else. The one aspect I will acknowledge is that while it might not have affected how easy it was for him to get the job, it did affect his ability to be disciplined. There are stories of him being lazy, which have no solid proof, but given he describes working for the government as boring, it's a fair wager he got into hacking without realizing it didn't actually work like in the movies. It's less epic infiltration and more data analysis. Also, it's pretty bold to be bragging about being a former Blizzard developer post-incident. Everyone always brings up the stolen breast milk, but not enough people talk about the Bill Cosby suite.
When I worked at Blizzard,
the DFEH says that some of her coworkers believe that other Activision Blizzard employees were passing around pictures of her vagina at a holiday party.
I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment.
She later killed herself on a business trip with a male supervisor.
I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment.
Who police found had brought a butt plug and a lube on the trip.
I grew up at Blizzard.
I am not implying Pirate Software was involved in any way. I simply want to highlight that bragging about it is really weird given the severity of what happened in other allegations at Blizzard. Then again, he associates with Twitch, so maybe he just doesn't care. He also brags about working for Amazon, another important sounding job unless you know anything about the games industry, and the fact that Amazon's game division is a massive joke that makes Warner Brothers look competent. Jason likes to show off his wins at DEF CON, which is an industry convention for security specialists and hackers. As a result, it's kind of a modern incarnation of Mensa, which was a society of people with high IQs. People who want to be perceived as smart either join these groups or actively participate in their content ecosystem. The legitimacy of his wins and some of the stories he's told have been drawn into question. For example, he claims the show Mr. Robot stole content from a write-up he did on a DEF CON puzzle. However, his was not the only write-up, and one of the main organizers of the event is a consultant on the show. The reality is that Pirate seemed to just like bragging about his credentials, with the knowledge that nobody in a Twitch stream chat is going to feel motivated to double-check what he is saying. So, yeah, basically every angle of what has supposedly qualified him to be an expert on StopKillingGames ended up being likely gross exaggerations of the truth in order to farm positive attention online from his fans. In reality, he's just a dumb normie gamer, like the rest of us. And that bothers him to no end, because he thinks he is better than us. Pirate Software is a game developer, so when he speaks on StopKillingGames, he does so from the opposite side of the aisle from us, the gamers. Game developers and publishers both have an incentive to be paid as much as possible for doing as little work as is feasible. If they got their way, they would charge $200 for games that would deactivate after 1 year, so you'd have to buy the annual copy. Just look at FIFA if you don't believe me. Now, that itself is not a conflict of interest. That's him having his opinion based on his experience. Ross's experience is studying criminal justice and reviewing games, so he's obviously going to align more with the consumers. That's all upfront information. Where this gets complicated is the fact that Pirate Software's one finished game is technically a live service, and the fact that he was actually the director of strategy at a game publisher named Off-Brand Games at the time that was publishing a live service game. Rivals of Aether was a popular indie fighting game that conformed to what the industry calls the box product model, i.e., you pay for a game and that is it. You own it and it works offline. Forever. People in 100 years will still be able to play this game. The developers get a one-time payout for working on and releasing the game whenever you purchase your copy. So then, Aether Studios approaches Off-Brand Games for consulting, to which Pirate Software is there to help them. And they walk out of that meeting deciding to make their sequel a live service game. Off-Brand Games is batting 0-1 on the killing games metric. Even EA and Ubisoft have better kill-death ratios. No wonder Jason doesn't want his very first game being published to be the target of legislature. Pirate has tried to discredit this conflict of interest by suggesting that he was paid the bare minimum that was legally required for this role, and he would ultimately step away from the company after his bad publicity was causing issues with Rivals of Aether 2. Aether Studios even came out to distance themselves from Off-Brand, saying that they weren't owned by the company and had an end-of-life plan ready. But that still means nothing for the microtransactions, unnecessary third-party account, and hostile end-user license agreement that says the game is a service rather than a product. It is still, however, a conflict of interest. Pirate Software was a fledgling game publisher and already approaching business the same way the big AAA companies were. The same ones he proclaimed to hate and left to pursue indie development because of. The fact that he was doing this to games he didn't even own might actually make him more evil, though. Like, he's trying to fuck over consumers for free, pushing microtransactions and killing games onto indie developers consulting with him because he was a good guy. Did he actually hate what the games industry was turning into, or was he just upset that he wasn't one of the big CEOs profiting from it? When Bobby Kotick killed Overwatch and tried to force its player base onto Overwatch 2, he did so because he wanted to see what would happen if you lit two yachts on fire and crashed them into each other. Pirate Software didn't even get a bag from trying to kill Rivals of Aether 2. Like, what is wrong with you, my guy? This is actually a trend with Jason. Whenever he has a shady position, he always rushes to state he isn't directly financially benefiting from it, despite obvious other angles that exist for him to profit. He also rushed to explain that his StopKillingGames coverage wasn't monetized, even though it was drawing eyes to his other content that was monetized. Great, so we're supposed to just believe you acted like a giant anti-consumer asshole out of the kindness of your heart, unlike those other grifters who did it for money. This will be very clear when we talk about the biggest example of him doing this later. Off-Brand itself phrases this wording to be hip and anti-greed, more influencer doublespeak bullshit. Off-Brand Games is a fully privately owned game publisher. We don't have outside investors or quarterly shareholder targets driving our decision-making. And yet, this company acts exactly like every major AAA publisher. Either way, him having these beliefs and holding a position of authority at an indie publishing company was a big issue, and I'm glad he either stepped down or got canned. Probably not a coincidence the King of Cowardly Takes Ludwig was involved in that company.
But I do think iDubbbz posting the content cop was one of the dumbest moves ever.
No shit. The last thing we need during the indie renaissance is the next Electronic Arts influencing game developers. Given his conflict of interest, people started asking questions about Pirate's own first-party games. Obviously, we've talked about his first unpiratable game, Champions of Breakfast, getting cracked quickly, yet him bragging about it years later, but what about his other projects? Project, singular. Heartbound has been in development for 7 years. This is in spite of the fact that the game it's transparently ripping off was made in only 2. Even better, there was a Kickstarter. It only raised $19,000, but still, raising money on Kickstarter and then not releasing a full game in a timely fashion usually looks bad for most people, even when said Kickstarters fail to raise enough money to fund a full development. It gets worse. The development was going fine during the first 2 chapters of 4. It was the third that became subject to the Yandere Sim curse, scope creep. In the pursuit of adding tons of choices to the game, he ended up getting caught in a rut. He was 98% done with the 3rd chapter for years, even claiming to be a couple rooms away from completion. But didn't he get in trouble during a World of Warcraft stream on a character that took over 100 hours to level? How was he finding the time to work on his game if so much of his workday was him doodling in Paint or playing video games? The answer is he wasn't. He also lied for months about the severity of his long COVID, that mysteriously was not bad enough to impede his progress as a full-time streamer on Twitch. He was streaming more frequently in 2018 and 2019, but to less than 80 average viewers. It's pretty typical after 2.5 years of not getting an audience. Most people tend to lose the drive to dedicate so much time into their online career. That's not COVID, that's called depression. It comes with your Twitch starter pack. Don't you hate when your illness impedes your ability to sit at a desk and develop games? And you have to shift your time into another job where you sit at a desk, but actually have to have energy to entertain people online. The reality was simple. He fell out of love with Heartbound and found success on Twitch. But to keep up appearances and try to avoid looking like the next Yandere dev, he tried to keep the illusion going to the point of absurdity. People on Steam started review bombing his game over SKG, but others were leaving legitimate negative reviews. As it turns out, the game really just wasn't good. And then people on YouTube started reviewing his game as well. Yeah, even the game reviewer crowd that is generally drama-averse were hopping in to make fun of Pirate Software, probably because he struck at one of our own. So he's really not all that qualified to speak from his experience as a professional game developer or publisher, nor even really as an indie developer. In fact, it draws into question his shorts content. After all, was he really one to give sage advice about how to be a developer when he couldn't even be bothered to develop his own game? I mean, anybody can spam out aspirational content in 1-minute increments with a deep voice. You can do it. Consistency isn't about putting in 100% every day. It's about just showing up and doing what you can. And you can, because anyone can realize their dreams in this world. You should especially put microtransactions in your game and tie it to a central server so it can't be played in 20 years. See, it's not that hard. In fact, let's see if I can get some other people to make some aspirational shorts in this style.
Game development is one of the hardest jobs on earth, so don't be surprised when you get upset by an obstacle or two. You just gotta power through it. With Heartbound, I've run into so many obstacles, but instead of taking the time to go back and fix them or simply giving up on the project entirely, I've dug in my heels at every turn and powered through the problems. And look where I'm at now. Follow my example.
Working hard requires you need to be humble, and you have to have humility. Like, dude, I rarely mention that I worked at Blizzard.
Gamers don't have to be your audience. They're not my audience. They don't have to be yours.
I was a hacker for the federal US government for 14 years, and here's what I learned. What I did was socially engineer Google's SEO algorithm so that anyone trying to pirate my game will only find a link to my developer website. Yeah, it's brilliant. You can't get around it.
I'm really pushing to try to get indie devs to accept microtransactions because it will make their games better.
You can be a career game developer even if you don't have a deep voice.
Game dev is about quality. That's what I learned working on QA during the flawless launch of Diablo 3.
So yeah, he's not some qualified expert game developer. He's really just some asshole on the internet with an opinion. Everybody's got one, but he thinks his is special, and can't even conceive that he might have gotten something wrong. Or even if he did, he will not admit to it. Pirate Software gained fame for pretending to be a nice guy, yet in reality he constantly acted arrogant and smug in ways that were off-putting. Most people just ignore and avoid stuff like that if they don't like it, but when they can't ignore it, it becomes extremely grating to hear Jason speak on literally anything.
For everybody that's in chat that's like, investors controlled the deadlines, did that shit come to you in a dream? Are you just like spouting out nonsense that you're stating as fact? If you're going to make a claim, post a link, show the evidence, because that shit's ridiculous. We're trying to figure out like what actually went wrong here, not just what came to you in a dream. So they worked at it for 8 years. Yeah, because you have to understand, working in games takes a long time. You may not like the outcome. You may not like the designs or things like that. Doesn't mean it didn't take a long time.
Man, that sucks. Well, a shame there's no initiatives out there to help, huh? So why didn't his fans ever really notice that the nice guy thing was a charade? Because it's pretty much all buried in hours upon hours of stream VODs. Even if he's being a dick, he acts so confidently about it that it just seems justified. His audience is most likely around because he's the deep-voiced guy that tries doing intellectual zingers. But as we've demonstrated, his confidence is unearned and his ego as being this intelligent person is exceptionally fragile. Turns out it's rather easy to get banned from his chat, likely due to his tendency to get into fights with his chatters for disagreeing with him. And then he labels these people as rage baiters, which is standard Twitch code for, I am ignoring the criticism these people are bringing up. Pirate digs his heels in, but why? My theory is that his brain is literally fried. As someone who does long streams and has done periods of time where my entire week was streaming, I speak with authority, a deep voice, and credentials on this. Jason is busy monitoring the chat. He has his game project open, usually playing some game as well, keeping track of donation goals and questions and his moderation staff. He's busy, and he's doing this for hours. Whenever I stream, I usually need to cool off after because I'll often get into a zone that's way too extra for the real world. Being in that zone for a week was pretty destructive, so I can only imagine what being a full-time streamer for years has done to him. It's basically like self-imposed ADHD. Now, he might do well at responding to the latest update on some internet drama, but he's going to suffer when it comes to a complex legal briefing in a jurisdiction he doesn't live in. So he goes in annoyed at people asking him to look at this, and then if he gets something slightly wrong, he gets into a fight with chatters. Then Ross joins to comment on stuff he's getting wrong, only exacerbating the fighting and hostility. He's not operating at 100%, so he starts coming up with weird hypotheticals or straight up misunderstanding what is said.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable?
He would try to claim this was a hypothetical, a, quote, possible and insane outcome, unquote. which is why he brought up the same hypothetical across 2 different streams on different days with different examples, because he definitely considered it just a hypothetical.
Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
And it is taking him so long, he may have forgotten key information established prior that would have helped him understand the current point. I actually think this is one of the many pervasive issues with Twitch. There is such fierce competition for airtime that they stream for too long and start talking about issues more complicated than they should handle. And given it seems to be a Dunning-Kruger competition already, they retain fans basically through stoically ignoring criticism for as long as possible. After all, if a fan's entire free time is eaten up by watching the latest hours of content a streamer has produced, they probably aren't watching any kind of counterpoints made against them unless it breaches a certain threshold of popularity. Twitch debates, in quotes, are just the fans of both people spamming Creator W for their preferred guy. Still, Jason is unusually bad about this. Most people on Twitch will embrace a small amount of humility, especially if it helps their image. People actually tend to like someone who showcases they can take licks, even if they are ignoring the bulk of what they're called out for. His strategy as a creator seemed to be to try to always be in the right, avoid callouts, ban anyone pointing out errors, delete VODs that make him look bad, and issue takedowns against anyone spreading clips of his fuck-ups online. I guess I have to mention that he prefers to go by his middle name, Thor, and that he's likely faking his deep voice with a mix of vocal training, audio plugins, and the proximity effect on his microphone. It's below the belt, but trust me, I've been cutting out the more fiery insults I've levied at this guy. Pirate Software accidentally opened his Discord on stream and revealed messages with his mod and Discord Law Enthusiast where they were talking about donating strategies and methods to get refunds. Okay, so basically on Twitch they have this thing called a hype train. The idea is that large amounts of donations in a short period of time build up levels that can unlock something. I don't know, I don't watch Twitch because of stuff like this. Anyways, it eventually expires, and he wanted to set a record for it, so it was exposed that his moderator was donating on both his main and alt accounts to artificially keep the hype train going. The idea is that fans will want to help Pirate break this record by donating, but instead of allowing it to fail naturally, it's extended artificially. If his mod had only done this on his main, it would be obvious that it was being pumped by his biggest fan. But the fact that he used an alt account makes it look like there's more genuine interest than there really is. Crypto scams do this regularly to make it look like the token has more users than it really does to con people into buying in. Now, Pirate claimed he was not directly reimbursing the moderator in exchange for these donations. However, the moderation staff would receive equal shares as a bonus of half of the revenue generated by the hype train. The moderator donated $1,200 and got back $2,500, and that's just the one we know about due to Pirate accidentally leaking his DMs. There are a dozen other moderators getting these bonuses that we don't know about. It's also on record that his moderator was specifically targeting these donations to land just shy of when the train would expire, and that the motivation for using his alt was because of weird AF messages being sent a prior time they had done this hype train thing as well, when he used purely his main account. Pirate even says it's fine to do this if the hype train is about to fail. In other words, Pirate is either knowingly colluding to pump up the donation amounts, or unknowingly being manipulated by his moderators to get bigger bonuses. Either way, the main party that is losing is Pirate's own fans. So his defense, rather than to fire his mods, being...
No, it is not against TOS. It is absolutely not against TOS to have somebody use their own money to buy subs and bits for the channel if they want to. That in no way was triggered by me, nor was he compensated for that or reimbursed for it. That is not against TOS.
Yeah, I think something shady happened. The other half, which was $37,500, was sent to Pirate's Ferret Rescue, which is a for-profit business. Yeah, Pirate isn't directly benefiting from the hype train. He's not pocketing the money now, he's just sending it to his Ferret Rescue, which is still a business expense. He has to report on his taxes and get deductions from against his income, meaning he pays less in taxes and he gets to run a ferret rescue, which is a huge positive PR spin for him and his channel. Yeah, there's no financial upside for him. There's nothing to see here, folks. Yeah, this is why most content creators donate to or run non-profit charities. This isn't a slam dunk, he broke the law. That's for the government to figure out. Crime is legal. The point is simply that his operation is shady as fuck. To do that authority thing again, I'm planning on doing a charity thing at this moment. Here's how it will work. I'll donate $1 for every mile I rode coast to coast this summer. That's about 4,000 in total. There will be a big button giving you the option to donate money as well. It goes straight to St. Jude's. I put my personal donation towards my taxes. Simple, transparent. I benefit, the charity benefits, cancer kids benefit. The fans know exactly what the stakes are if they want to donate as well. I highlight all of this to showcase that Jason should be discredited to the highest degree. Not only is he a big fat phony on the claims of his experience and capabilities, but he's not even really someone you can trust as a content creator. I have far more trust in people who are just honest and say they're either in it for the money or see money as a resource to continue making content. Pirate Software is an influencer in as derogatory a manner as that term can be used. After Ross's video and Jason's response, the petition started gaining ground again. When the big push happened, the petition hit almost 1 million signatures, in spite of the fact that it is an EU petition being pushed by largely English-speaking YouTubers. Pretty good. There was almost immediately some doubt from Pirate's community, claiming upwards of 250,000 signatures must have been forged because clearly there couldn't have been that big of a push on a day when everyone invested in the campaign agreed to cover it all at once. So the movement kept pushing. Prior to Jason, it had sat flatly at just above 400,000 signatures. When it all ended, it had cleared over 1 million signatures over. Not just over 1 million. 1 million over where it had almost died thanks to Pirate Software.
I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted.
Some say the movement only succeeded out of spite for Jason. That's a dub, we count those. If people are getting interested in the topic and sharing the idea around, even if it's out of spite for one guy being annoying, that's still word being spread about a good cause. A funny theory I've heard is that thanks to his tendency to pathologically lie about these things, the pirate may one day start trying to take credit for the movement succeeding. So he has to be eternally reminded that no, he was not the heel or some propped up antagonist. As far as Jason was concerned, the matter was settled, and he wasn't talking about or coordinating anything with Ross. Ross had thrown out his video as a desperate Hail Mary, and it wasn't even particularly drama-oriented. Ross was much more patient than anyone else would be, given what was said about not just his movement, but his character. But it got the right gears moving to have a big impact. No. Pirate Software is a cautionary tale about why you shouldn't trust guys with deep voices who speak authoritatively. Even when called out, he tried to pin responsibility on the individual to make their own decisions, but, well, even that sucks as an excuse. He didn't give his fans an accurate image of what StopKillingGames was. Come on, we all saw the clip of you saying you were actively going to hinder the movement. You didn't think we were going to notice? Pirate was, however, the perfect antagonist for StopKillingGames. His refusal to back down, de-escalate, or even simply apologize kept the fire alive long enough to overcome people's apathy. But of course, it would have been nice if it had been able to succeed without needing to read about how he doesn't wear shoes and tracks mud inside the house of furries that he meets on Howler. I do think it's cringe how many people were writing this all off as slop. There are definitely silly and drama-oriented components to the story, and it obviously depends on who you're listening to talk about this issue. But people who refuse to participate in any kind of drama really should learn an important lesson from this. StopKillingGames almost lost because of that attitude. The internet used to do gentlemanly debates, and most of those people got outed as sex pests. People felt passion about this, and that's what motivates change. Stop being post-ironic and meta above it all. Take your W. Of course, I'm obviously not going to celebrate until anything is actually accomplished. All we did was encourage some Europeans to sign a piece of paper. Let's see when the change actually happens, what goes down. What I also hope we learn today is that there are no nice guys on the internet, and that you should show a little bit of scrutiny to people claiming to have experience or authority on a subject. Everyone's turned on this guy now, but a year ago, everybody was quietly humming along to his tune. even if they didn't watch him personally. So ask yourself, who is the next pirate software that you're quietly agreeing with now? Don't say me, come on.
Be a little original.